Welcome in, Tuesday edition. I hope all of you are having a fantastic start to your Tuesday. I was out yesterday. My thanks to the crew, Jonas Knox, I believe, and Jeff Schwartz, who set in. Why was I out? Well, I was out because I was at WrestleMania in Houston. Second day, they did a Saturday WrestleMania and a Sunday WrestleMania, and it was really cool. I was down near the ring, right by the ramp where everybody walked in. I was with my wife, who is a big, longtime WWE fan. She was actually wearing her Ricky the Dragon Steamboat shirt, and she went to WrestleMania 3, my wife did, in Detroit, the Pontiac Silverdome, back when Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant were wrestling. 90-some-odd thousand people were there for WrestleMania 3, and it was an event, and you may remember that yourself, or you may have gone back and watched some of those old-school wrestling matches when those guys were such iconic figures. Hulk Hogan was there, which was cool to see him. We had a good time in Tampa. The weather held off in the evening, and it was a pretty fantastic time. So that's where I was on Monday, traveling back from Tampa. I'm now back in the seat here, and we are ready to roll. I will say, sitting ringside for WrestleMania, the athleticism of the wrestlers is pretty impressive to be able to see up close like that. And I've never sat ringside for a big boxing match or a big UFC event, and that makes me want to go to a big boxing match or a big UFC event and be able to sit down close and see it face to face as opposed to seeing it through television. There's just something about being able to appreciate the athleticism better, to me, if you are watching it in person as opposed to watching it on television. The guys are bigger, faster, and stronger. Same thing, by the way, for football. If you ever get a chance to watch a major college football game or an NFL game down really close where you can get a sense for the size and the speed of the guys on the field, it's definitely a unique experience. So even something simple like seeing somebody climb to the top of the ropes when you're sitting down ground level and can look up and see how high those guys are on the ropes, pretty cool. So it was an awesome experience. So that was a lot of fun. Thanks to the president of WWE, Nick Khan, for bringing my wife and I down and hosting us. We had a phenomenal time there hanging out with him. So, bunch of different things that are going on in the world, but I'll react a little bit to the Masters because I wasn't on Monday to react to it. And, Dub, I don't know how your gambling bets went with the Masters, but it was a mess for me because I had Xander Schauffele, and whose name I'm probably messing up, but I had him at a big payday, and he completely fell apart at 16. And truth be told, this was not a very interesting Sunday at the Masters. And even Saturday, you had the rain delay. But Sunday, there was about 20 minutes of drama when Hideki Matsuyama put the ball into, he put it in the water. I think it was on 15. And then Xander cut it to 2 shots. And he had the opening tee shot on 16 to really put, I think, a lot of pressure on Matsuyama, maybe enough that if he had hit a good shot on 16, I think he may have won the tournament. Instead, he put it in the water, which almost no one does at 16, right? That's not a really greatly difficult tee shot. Now, sometimes you're not close enough to the pin. You have to, 2 or 3 putt, which is what Matsuyama did. So that can be a challenge. But Xander Schauffele, I think he had not had a triple bogey in like 1,000 holes of major action so far. He puts it in the water, and then he comes back on his drop and hits it into the gallery behind the hole, which is also another awful shot. So he went back-to-back triple bogeys, and Matsuyama, as a result, can really coast his way into winning the green jacket. And then, by the way, credit to Matsuyama. I saw some of these pictures out on Monday. He is just sitting in the normal seats outside of a gate in Atlanta with his green jacket and the couple of guys that he's traveling with, not flying private, not even sitting in a private area of the Atlanta airport. He's just chilling in the terminal. Totally regular dude who happens to have a green jacket and have won the biggest golf honor in Japan, which is a golf mad country in that country's history. So would you agree with me, Dub, as a diehard Masters fan, that Sunday, other than about 20 minutes where you started to think, hey, maybe Matsuyama's gonna crumble a little bit down the stretch starting at 15, but then Xander Schauffele wasn't even able to keep the pressure on him because he immediately dunked it?
Yeah, it was pretty much a total snooze fest on Sunday, which, not every Masters can be 2019. Not
Right.
every single one is going to be an all-time great. But I had some money on Will Zalatoris, and then my big bet of the week was John Rahm to finish in the top 10. So he went out and shot a 66 on Sunday, which kind of saved me there.
Yeah.
But speaking on Xander Schauffele, he had 7 birdies on Sunday, and
Yeah.
Matsuyama shot 1 over. If you would have known that information before the round started, I think there would have been a lot of people that would have had some money on Xander.
Do you think that's
win.
a choke job on 16 when he put it in the water? Is it fair to say that that's a choke?
Well, I was listening to him talk to the media after his round, and he said that he hit the exact shot that he wanted to, but him and his caddy just misjudged the wind.
Yeah.
He said he thought the wind was helping, but it was actually hurting. So he said he hit a perfect shot, but they just miscalculated before the shot. So,
And well, then he followed it up with a pretty bad shot
Right.
from the drop zone too.
but not only 16, but in the middle of his front 9, he bogeyed 3, he bogeyed 4, then he double bogeyed 5. So he had
Yep.
2 separate occasions where he really gave up some shots there. But, congrats to Hideki Matsuyama. And those pictures that you're talking about of
Pretty
him at the
awesome.
airport yesterday were fantastic. Those were really cool to see.
It's also interesting, by the way, and I want to mention this because there's a lot of talk about cancel culture in the world of sports, and certainly we saw it with Rob Manfred pulling the All-Star game out of Atlanta. And by the way, Braves fans just indignant now because not only did the All-Star game get pulled out of Atlanta, but that crazy call on Sunday, which I can react to, I guess, now, even though it's Tuesday, where they looked at it on instant replay. And still, if you haven't watched this, I mean, it's worth going back. And I think it's one of the flaws of instant replay. I don't understand how you can have instant replay and still get something wrong like this. But I do think this is great evidence for anybody out there who's listening and they're worried about people being mad at them on social media or what's the reaction going to be. Once the Masters started play on Thursday, nobody talked about the idea of canceling the Masters anymore. And it was a ridiculous boycotting the Masters, whatever you want to call it. It was a ridiculous idea in the first place. Even some people said you need to relocate the Masters, which I said is basically like saying, hey, you need to relocate the University of Georgia. The Masters exist in Augusta. You either play it there or you don't play it at all. But once you started and you teed off, nobody talked about the idea of canceling the golf course or the golf competition anymore. And I think there's so much fear and so much trepidation out there in the marketplace in general that people overreact. And I think that's what happened, frankly, with Rob Manfred when he pulled the Major League Baseball All-Star game. I was reading over the weekend, the Washington Post had a big article up that I was catching up on. And they said, hey, the new Georgia voting bill actually isn't going to restrict voting access at all. In fact, there may be more people voting in Georgia in the wake of this new bill because they expanded early voting and other aspects. And so we are so quick to be captured by whatever viral outrage there is, oftentimes in the world of sports, before people ever actually do any research about it. And to me, this was an interesting angle, was once they teed off, there was all this talk, even the president got asked about it, what should be going on at Augusta. Once they teed off, the story disappeared. Now, I'm bringing it back up right now just as evidence that once you get to the sporting event itself, all of the other discussion is noise and it vanishes. And so I actually think a lot of these sports leagues should do less as opposed to doing more. Because once the games themselves start, that's what becomes the discussion point. What happened? Was Xander Schauffele, did he choke at 16 with the shot that he put in the water? Would Hideki Matsuyama have won if Xander Schauffele had been able to keep the overall pressure up on him? Those become the talking points. Even Justin Rose and how hot of out of the gate he came out on that opening Thursday. These are all of the things that fans talk about. And the idea of boycotting or canceling or anything else, the story just vanishes. And I don't know about you, Dub. You basically watched every minute. Once they actually teed off at the Masters, did you hear anything more about the idea of canceling or boycotting, or was it all about golf?
Yeah, it was pretty much just golf, 100%. No more talks of the boycott, no more talks of anything of that nature.
And so I think that's indicative of, for sports leagues and athletes and owners and teams and all these different people affiliated with sports, there's a lot of noise. But most of the time, if you ignore the noise and just focus on your craft, your sport itself, the noise disappears. And you don't have to embolden or respond to people who are making outlandish claims. And I think it's an instructive example of what happened in the world of the golf compared to Major League Baseball. And Rob Manfred, by the way, has still not canceled his Masters membership. So much of these cancel culture decisions are total BS when they're actually broken down, right? Like, there isn't any tangible evidence of any real outlandish protest. And, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. So old school, I worked on Capitol Hill back during the Bill Clinton impeachment trial. And I was the lowest man on the totem pole. I was in college at the time. And I was in charge of stacking all the responses, pro and con, for whether Bill Clinton should be impeached. And one of the things that they found out with the way that people would send mail in Congress was they would get a lot of different people to sign on, and they might send you 1,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever it was pieces of mail, but they were all identical and they just had a different name on them. And it was because these groups, which were perpetually outraged, would try to convince you that way more people cared about a particular side of an issue than really did by sort of these mass mail drops that they would bring to bear on contentious issues. And I remember literally bottom level in a congressman's office sitting there and opening all of these different opinions. And what it was manufactured outrage. People really weren't as angry as these letters would have you believe. And I think that's transferred from loading down congressmen's offices with negative opinions or positive opinions of any bill that aren't really representative, but are designed to make you think that this is a big deal. That's social media every day. A lot of these companies basically have rigged bots. And so it looks like 1,000 people really care about something, and it might be 20 people that have all these different fake accounts constantly peppering you from those fake accounts. And one of the things that I've even noticed on OutKick, as you know, when I dive in and read mentions every now and then, I'll block somebody because it's like just hyper negative or whatever. And I don't do it very often. I mean, we've got, 800,000 people probably who follow us, 900, maybe 1 million people who follow us on social media. And I bet we've blocked 500 or 600 people total. But what's interesting is when somebody gets blocked, that person almost always has a series of anonymous accounts that are all linked. In other words, they have like a bunch of different burner accounts to try to make whatever they're arguing look more substantial than it actually is. And so one of the lessons that I would take away from Hideki Matsuyama's win at the Masters is all of this outrage, this cancel culture, this boycott universe vanishes if you can hold out and actually get to the point of the actual athletic event itself beginning, as opposed to allowing yourself to be overtaken by all that anger and vitriol and everything else. I think it's just a good lesson. And I think it's a good lesson for a lot of you out there too, regardless, because as a guy who's found himself in the center of a lot of media hurricanes over the years, I can tell you almost every story vanishes after 24 hours. People are outraged. They take their pound of flesh. They're so mad. And then they move on to something else. And I think that's what we saw with the Masters. And I think it's what we would have seen with the All-Star game if Rob Manfred hadn't blown it, if he had kept the All-Star game in Atlanta. All right, when we come back, we're going to be joined by my buddy Chad Withrow at OutKick 360. Also, let me give you a roadmap of where we're headed. John McClain from the Houston Chronicle is scheduled to join us in the second hour. We'll talk NFL and obviously Deshaun Watson with him as he covers the Houston Texans. And then Petros Papadakis is scheduled to join us in the third hour. That is where we are headed. I am Clay Travis. Encourage you to go get your bets in at fanduel.com/Clay. That's fanduel.com/Clay. Up to $1,000 no-risk wager. $1,000 you can't lose. All you need to do is sign up. Go to fanduel.com/Clay. This is OutKick on Fox Sports Radio.